I'm so often asked, what brand of shoes do you recommend? What are you wearing? And here's the quick answer would be, I'll just tell you what brand I love. But you have a different foot than I do, and you may be doing different activities than I am. So the best thing that any of us can do is focus on what's my foot. My foot needs what? And what activities am I going to be doing in this shoe? And then there are a few more just personal preferences. And aside from what kind of foot, you also may have some other things going on. So if you too have a bunion, how sexy is that? Curves where you didn't know you needed them. And or you've got plantar fasciitis, or you frequently twist your ankles and don't know how to cope with that, there are a lot of things that you can do to make your shoes actually support you and prevent issues down the road, support you right now. So this episode, it's all about that. Hey, I'm Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I share answers to your top struggles and concerns. I share with you what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset, your thoughts between the ears, so that you can have the energy, the vitality that you want in this second and better half. So today I'm diving into a subscriber question. And actually, this comes from somebody who's recently signed up to start Stronger with us in July. So if you're listening to this live in 2020 in June, there are a few more days and you can still get in. So this is no quick fix. Here you go. Here's videos. Let that sit on your computer and never use it. This is 12 weeks where we actually all start together. So everybody who's in the course with you will be in week 1 or week 2, and we do 12 weeks. And here's why. I know after 36 years of supporting women in midlife, primarily, not exclusively, but definitely doing that for the last 8 years, I know that if I can keep you moving for 90 days, not just 5 or 10, if I can get you doing the right thing, you will feel different. You will be sleeping better, most likely, especially if you needed that. You will start to feel more toned. People will tell you, you must have gotten a haircut. They will compliment you knowing something's different. They just may not be able to put their finger on it, but you'll know. And that's the secret to really changing your life. I don't want to change it for a few weeks. I want to change your life and give you a lifestyle that fits. It's realistic. So Stronger program's all about twice a week strength training designed based on a woman in perimenopause or postmenopause, featuring the science of studies that featured you. So you're not a male. You're also not a 20 or 30 something female, and you are not delicate. Don't mistake my words for that. But you do need to have some proof that what we're doing has worked for women just like you, because hormone fluctuation, let's face it, plays a big game on us, and we weren't counting on that. So if you still want in, I will leave the link in the show notes. It's flipping50.com/get stronger. I'd love to see you in there. But no matter why you're buying shoes and you want to know more about how to do that better, here we go. Let's roll right into it. And if you happen to be a health coach or personal trainer and you want to know more about helping women get better results that you're already working with, or help all of those 42 million women in menopause that are looking actively for help, you can check out flipping50.com/specialist and learn more about the first and the only fitness certificate and training program designed for women in perimenopause and postmenopause. That's flipping50.com/specialist. Love to see you in there. All right, let's dive in. So first of all, what woman doesn't love shoes? I love shoes. However, you cannot walk into a foot store or shoe store and pick the pink ones, right? Or the blue ones and the ones that look good. There are a couple things you've got to know, because shoes are your foundation. So take this into consideration. Your feet actually are a joint. There's a lot of them in there, but your feet, then whatever you're standing on. So you can be barefoot standing on your carpet right now, or on your hardwood floor or your tile floor. You could be in the sand at the beach. All of that affects what happens at your ankles and at your knees and at your hips and your lower back and up the kinetic chain. So suddenly, shoes may be much more about what's cute and what works for you. Super important. So what I'm going to do is start with, I can't tell you what brand, and or I could very easily tell you that I love Asics right now. That's what I've been wearing for a while, but I can also tell you that prior to that I was wearing Saucony, and prior to that I was wearing Nike, swore by them up and down and all around. And my foot changes, so does yours as we age. And my needs change, so my activities change, so I'm going to be buying different shoes. I have a bunion that I didn't have when I was in my 20s. I, run a lot less. That's not my only focus right now. I have a lot better balance than I ever did in the activities that I'm doing. So all of those things come into play. So I'm going to give you the best advice for how to choose for you. Think of this much more like a blueprint than me selling you, hey, sister, what I love is the Asics Kianos. I mean, those are my favorite running shoe. And I will use other Asics for, say, walking around or for doing strength training. Just, as a fitness professional, often I still need to be dressed in active wear while I'm teaching, demonstrating, showing, not necessarily exercising myself. And first lesson I want you to know is you don't want to wear your athletic shoes the rest of the day. You don't want to kind of cross over and just be wearing them constantly because they're so comfortable. If you're doing that, and budget-wise you can afford it, buy 2 pair because your shoes need to breathe. They also need recovery between their workouts, essentially. All right. So first of all, there's things that you need to know, and one thing that's more important than anything else that I'll say here is you have to know your foot. So you don't want to go out and buy a brand until you know what shoe in that brand. And here's how it works. It's kind of like you could go to a Mexican, Chinese, or an Italian restaurant, right? There's going to be a lot of food on the menu that is Mexican, Italian, or Chinese. There's not just one food. And when you think about brands of shoes, it's a lot like that. So there's going to be a shoe for a flat foot, for neutral feet, and for high arches. There are going to be more stable shoes. There are going to be more cushion shoes. And so you've got a lot of choices, and it suddenly just got complicated. It's like staring at the menu when there are 100 choices, right? So here's how you narrow that down. Number one, know your foot. Do you have flat feet? Do you have a neutral foot? And do you have a high arch? And if you have no idea, that's okay. Here's how you do it. So get your foot a little bit wet. You can step on the pavement where you're going to be able to see your footprint for a little while. Nobody really uses paper sacks anymore, but you might see if you've got a cardboard box. So you want something that'll absorb the water. So you want to step on, say, a paper sack from the grocery store. I know we don't do that anymore. Not politically correct, maybe even to say that, but you get the idea, that kind of absorbable material, and step down. And if you see, say, your toes, you see the ball of your foot, you see your heel, and then there's nothing at your arch, you have a pretty neutral foot. If you see that edge of your foot, so is all connected, your heel to the ball of your foot and your toes in that footprint, you can see that very clearly. That's a neutral foot. If you see 2 parts to your foot, you see your heel and you see the ball of your foot where it's landing in probably your toes, but there's nothing in between connecting them. There's no little inlet there. You have a higher arch. And so you need to know that. If you see the whole darn foot, there's really no arch. You can see something everywhere. You've got a flatter foot. Now, if you have too much water on your foot, it's going to kind of skew your results a little bit. But think about the kind of footprint you're doing. So take a few steps, get your foot wet, take a few steps, walk across the floor and tiles or bricks somewhere where you can see that footprint, and then figure out maybe the deck. So a wooden deck would also work in some cases. So figure out what kind of a foot do you have, because that starts telling us a little bit about your needs. Here's how it works. If you have a flat foot, that is a very flexible foot. What you need is a marriage in your shoe that is the opposite. So you need a more rigid, stiff, supportive shoe to support you during exercise. If you have a high arch on the other extreme, you have a rigid foot. More rigid feet need a flexible shoe. So you're looking for very different shoes. And if you're neutral, somewhere in between, you need a neutral shoe. You don't need one or the other. So you want to find something that's kind of mid-range for you. Next up, okay, so let's talk about the activity. So you know your foot, right? Then you need to know, what activity am I shopping for? And you don't necessarily need, so I know, don't panic. So if you lift weights and you run and you walk, and you do aerobics sometimes, or you play tennis or racquetball, you don't necessarily need a different shoe for every activity, but some get very specific about what they're designed to do. So think about the activity that you do most. But here's one thing that I will have you keep in mind. If I'm picking a shoe and I'm doing a lot of running, when I come back from a run, or if I'm going strength training and I'm trying to lift heavy, I actually don't use that same shoe, because when you're, say doing a leg press, if you are, and pushing hard, pushing heavy, then you're eliminating some of that cushion sooner in that shoe. So when you're out there running and you're landing and you're getting some impact, you don't want to lose that cushion, because that's going to send you to the store to have to buy another pair. Running shoes also can start to feel like this is just a flat tire. There's no support there. I'm not getting the cushioning that I did at the beginning. Sometimes sometimes it's a little bit harder to show, but you may see it or feel it when you come back. Your feet are a little bit more sore than they ever were before. So I like to rotate shoes. So I have at least two pair. Well, let's be honest, I have more than that, but I have at least two pair that I'm rotating. If I'm running, that's one pair of shoes. Now, I may also walk in that shoe, but I want you to consider something, that when you run, your weight should be landing on the ball of your foot. When you walk, you need a heel strike. You step down with your heel first, and then you roll through the foot. So you can see how those two shoes would be very different. So if you're not a runner, you are a walker and you know it, don't buy the running shoes just because they're the cute ones or you like that color better, because you're going to fit your needs better if you go with the shoe designed for walking that's a heel strike. So you'll also find that in a running shoe, it's designed to propel you forward. So the back heel is built up. And so if you're walking in it, it's not actually going to feel the most comfortable, because it's a little bit awkward. And you may not even realize that's the case if you've never tried on a walking shoe. So if you find, now in your 50s or 60s, you're walking more than you're running, you're by choice, don't necessarily go right to that running shoe that you've used for years because you like it. Go to a walking shoe and purchase one that's designed for the activity that you're doing most, okay? And similarly with aerobic shoes. So in aerobics, if you're doing, I haven't used that word for a long time. We use group fitness now, and it's more politically correct. but there's still a lot of lateral movement happening in those Zumba classes or those high-low classes. And, or if you're, wearing shoes, say on your rebounder. Now, some people don't, I know, others do, especially those with foot problems. But if you're doing wearing shoes while you're doing different activities, you have to think about, if I move laterally, then I need a shoe that gives me stability laterally. And court shoes are like that. So if you're playing racquetball, tennis, and I know some of you are probably playing pickleball, you may want more of a court shoe, because if you're in a running shoe and you have weak ankles, you'll be more likely to turn your ankle. So think about some of the things and specifics to you, and we'll get into some details about your personal foot, right? So the uniqueness of it right now in a bit. So number 1 was know your feet, right? Know what you have. Number 2 is know the activity, the primary activity that you participate in. And number 3, try on a few pair. So don't just order online thinking, well, I know that I've always been a size 8, so I'm just going to order the size 8. And I know it's a little bit of a hassle right now, at least while I'm doing this live, to go into a store, and everything feels like it takes a little bit more effort, to strategically plan social distancing, wear the mask, and be safe. But it's worth it here. So periodically, you may want to do this if it's been a few years since you've actually gone into a store, got fitted by a couple different shoe lines. So literally, try on some that are in the Saucony line, some that are in the New Balance, some that are in the Asics line. And those are 3 really popular brands. The first 2 probably recommended more by podiatrist friends that I know than any other kind, and that was New Balance and Saucony. So you might want to consider those, especially if you've got some foot problems. And then Asics, that's just a personal favorite, but I've worn a lot of different shoes as long as I've tried them on first. So I would never just order online a brand or a shoe that I hadn't tried on. So do that first. Then if you decide you're going to order them somewhere else and maybe see if you can get, a better rate or bargain, then you'll be set up and know what size you need. Do remember this, trying on shoes late in the day is better because your feet will swell as they get warmer during the day. So 3-4 p.m. is a better time to try it on. Make sure you have the socks on, or the store has socks that you can try on that are the same thickness that you typically wear. Don't take a size of shoe that you have to wear an extra thick or extra thin sock in order to fit into. That's ridiculous. Okay, so wear the thickness of the sock that you prefer, and make sure that it works for you, and you're doing it late in the afternoon, and you'll get the best fit that way. You also want to consider that your foot swells while you're exercising. So if you are in our Flipping 50 community and following the lifestyle, we don't want to do endurance training. So there's going for a long walk, though. There's wearing a pair of shoes while you're golfing for a few hours, though. There's going for a longer hike that may or may not be exercise, but they're active shoes, footwear that you need to be observing. Your foot is going to swell and grow while you're there, right? So you want to make sure you've got at least a thumb length between the end of your toe and the end of your shoe. And I know a lot of us women, we seem to get hooked on sizes and not like to go up to the new size or think those look so terribly big. But trust me, there's nothing worse than being out on a run knowing that your shoes are too small, that your foot is running into the end of your shoe in your toe box, and you will lose toenails by doing that. And I won't tell you how I know that. Okay, so buy the half size bigger whenever you're in doubt. Don't go with the smaller pair. Okay, all right. Then you're also trying them on for this reason. You need to compare and contrast. do you like extra conditioning or cushioning in the bottom, or do you prefer extra stability? You want a little bit stiffer. So some of that is personal preference. Your foot will dictate you need a stable shoe, or you need a more rigid shoe, or you need a more flexible shoe. But you then, want to try things on and say, okay, now I've got the stability shoe in this brand line on. That's what I'm trying on. How does it feel to me? And try on another one from a different brand. So maybe you try on a stability shoe from Saucony and a stability shoe from New Balance and a stability shoe from Asics. That'll tell you which of these feels most comfortable for me. Okay, so number 4, my advice is to buy more than one pair if you can. And that might mean that you buy a pair for running or walking, or you buy a pair for doing your court activities or aerobics, because that will allow you to do lateral movement safely, and that you buy a pair that's maybe for your weight training, because if you're using heavier weights, even if you're at home and you're using a weighted vest and you're holding on to a kettlebell, you could be adding up to 50 pounds to your body weight, and that will reduce the cushioning in that shoe faster. So you don't want to be relying on that for your running, and have that eliminated sooner. So if you can afford to do it, buy more than one pair, either for the specific activities and or to alternate, so you're not wearing the same shoe you wore for strength training for your running, where you want and expect that cushion for high impact activities. Okay, next up, couple of things specific to you. Do you, if you have a bunion like I do, in fact, I showed a picture of myself lounging by the swimming pool with my feet, out in front of me, and somebody commented on nice bunion. I was like, oh my God, how embarrassing is that? All right, not nice legs, nothing, no calf, compliments, bunions. All right then. So I will need a wider kind of a toe box, basically. So with the ball of your foot and toe, I need a wider toe box. Otherwise, I've got problems. So always you're going to be choosing width if you're ordering shoes or buying them. Do you need a B width or wider than that, or do you have a really narrow foot? So you need to know that, and somebody fitting you will know. You'll be selecting it. You probably know. But if you have a bunion, you're going to look for a shoe that has and is known for a wider toe box so that you're supported by it. Otherwise, that bunion breaks right out of shoes quickly. I've had a pair of shoes for a month and I'm already breaking out of it, literally. So pretty soon there's going to be a hole in the side of my shoe. And you also want to think about what issues do you have. So not just, the bunion, but those weak ankles I alluded to. You may then want a wider heel box, because that'll give you more stability. You'll be less likely to roll on your ankle if you have a wider heel box in your shoe. So a couple of things to consider there. Also, for those of you who have plantar fasciitis, a heel cup in your shoe, kind of put in, can keep you from sliding around. And often that's one of the complaints of somebody who is experiencing plantar fasciitis or experiencing it for the very first time, that heel burning can be there first. So getting some support for the plantar fasciitis, that's the muscles underneath the foot, kind of that run between the forefoot and your heel. Getting a heel cup can help keep you a little bit more comfortable. And I hear from many of our participants, and it comes to when we're doing strength training and we have lunges or yoga and you're doing downward dog, the big toe arthritis is often an issue. So for the big toe, you can get specific support for inside of your shoe, so that when you're going for a walk or if you are doing some running, you're much more supported. You've got more cushion in that specific area. So things to ask about while you're at a store, and I would do that there, insert them in, try them on with the shoe that you're looking to either buy, or maybe the first time you buy it in the store, the second time you'll buy it online. And then last but not least is arch support. So specifically, if you need a little bit more arch support, try it on at the store, and that'll give you a little bit more cushion in the arch, so you're lifted there. And if you come back from runs and walks and you've got any complaints, that's the time to really do your assessment of, what are my needs? Is my heel bothering me? My bunion bothering me? My arches of my feet are bothering me? My ankles just felt unstable, or maybe you rolled it a little bit. So all of those things come to kind of fruition, and you'll know better at the end of a workout, or at the end of a day. If your feet hurt, take into account what specifically is bothering you. That will be helpful when you're picking out shoes. So there are all kinds of shoes for all kinds of activities, right? And, looking into running shoes, think about, what surface are you running on? Do you need a lot of traction or not? So if you are doing some trail running, for instance, you want a thicker sole. So I have running shoes for just normal, I'm primarily on sidewalk or pavement. And I have trail running shoes. So when I'm either going for long hikes or, usually there's a little bit of trail running going on in the middle of a long hike, I've got a stiffer sole, because you're going over rocks and or gravel, different terrain, and you want something to protect your foot a little bit more. At least I do. So last but not least is, when do you replace your shoes? So the rule of thumb is kind of, for running, 300 to 500 miles. And that'll depend on a lot of things, like how hard are you on them? And it depends if you are doing, 5 to 10 mile runs. And hopefully not many of you are doing that on a regular basis, because get into that kind of endurance training, unless you're really on the other side, stabilize your hormones, you're good to go, and you love it, that may work for you. But for the majority of us, shorter, higher intensity trainings and runs are going to do better in terms of helping you stabilize those hormones. But if you're doing some running or walking, 300 to 500 miles, it's a huge range. So 500 would probably be, if you're rotating your shoes, you're not going for extremely long runs, so you allow that cushioning to bounce back between very easily. It doesn't get squashed down. 300 would be, you're harder on your shoes. You're running a little bit more frequently. You're doing a lot of miles when you're doing it. And so you're probably going to replace, and maybe if you're a larger size person, you're going to replace sooner. You don't want to let that foundation get leaky, right? You don't want it to be deteriorating. And heads up. So if you are somebody who loves your athletic shoes, you can have the luxury of wearing shoes all day. I recommend that you don't wear your running shoes or your weightlifting shoes casually all day. Get a different pair for doing that. So if, for instance, you're a nurse who works out, you should have, some athletic shoes that you wear all day while you're at work, but they shouldn't be the same shoe that you wear while you're exercising. They need to breathe. So that's why having a couple of pair, and I will wear one pair of walking shoes. I've been walking a lot, even during COVID, 4 miles, 5 miles sometimes, and I don't want to wear the same shoes every day. So I'm rotating them, letting them breathe, because that cushioning comes back. That shoe will last a lot longer and do you a lot more good if you can do that. So think about that. Think about what your budget is, and or buy one pair now, and as soon as you can buy another pair, do that. But you will not regret taking time to do a little research to find out what's the best shoe for you. Not necessarily what's the best brand, because every brand really has a whole line of shoes for your foot, shoes for activities, shoes with more cushion, shoes with less cushion. So there you have it. That is how to choose the best shoe for you. So if you've got questions, you can add them below this episode, and this will be at flipping50.com/best shoes, best fitness shoes, sorry. And there'll be a dash between each of those words. And I'll also put the links to Stronger. So if you're not strength training, that is one of the things that is going to make you much more toned and age much better. Both now and later, you get the benefits. That's the kind of thing I like to do. So no matter what your activity, whether you love to golf, you love to run, you love to walk, or you're just all about grandchildren, strength training is going to help you do it better. What are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.